Have you ever felt boxed in and constrained by all these rules and regulations? You just wanted to get away and get free, and when you finally got your way and you got free, you were more empty than before? Stay tuned. Boy, Mark, I'll tell you, when I drive this, it's always a lot shorter than when I walk it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You know, I look down there and I look here, and it was kind of reminding me as we were talking about the prodigal son, because the road is so long and you always want to get home. Even though we're enjoying our talk, it's always nice to see the house and get home. And I think about that prodigal son, the father, hoping that his son would be coming home, and he stood out there and he waited and he waited and he waited, and that long dusty road waiting for his son to come back. And you know, it just makes me I don't know why, but I'm just thinking about that.
Yeah, you know, it's a neat story. The thing that really strikes me is, you know, a lot of people read the story and don't stop to think that it really never had to be that way.
Yeah, that's kind of true.
I mean, that son never had to leave home. There was no compulsion there. And you know, the Bible says, you know, some people think, you know, well, he was of age, he wanted some money, and so he decided he'd just get some money from dad and go into town and spend it. But the Bible doesn't say he went into town. It says he went into a far country.
So, you know, when you think about that, the far country, I mean, I try to apply that. He wanted to go as far away as he could. I mean, did you think he might not like his dad, or was he tired of his dad, or what was?
It seems like it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
He was, I mean, like so many young people, like I remember when I was that age, you know, there's too many rules at home, all these do's and don'ts, and I can't do this and I can't do that, and I'm fed up with it. And he wanted to get as far away as he could, and he had his own idea of how to have a fun time, because dad evidently was too old to understand.
Man, I can relate to that. You know, when I might have shared this with you before, but you know, when I was in school, I was in 4 high schools in less than 1 semester, kicked out of 2 church academies. And I thought the rules, all the do's and don'ts, you know, and I'll never forget this. I was getting kicked out of my last academy, and I was packing my bags, and I thought, I can't go home. I'm not going home. Yeah. I'm not going back, because it's going to be worse at home with all these rules and regulations. Right. I don't like them here. And so, you know what, I didn't think, well, I'm from Michigan. I didn't pack my bags up to say, I'm just going to go to Michigan. I was going to head to Seattle. I was going to get as far away as I could, because I wanted to not think about it anymore. And plus, I thought I was a failure.
Yeah, you know, and that's just like the story. When the prodigal son goes into that far country, the Bible said he ended up spending all, you know. I mean, we try to go to a place where we can so distract our minds with, you know, he was out drinking and carousing and partying. I can see him going into the bar at night and saying, hey, everybody, the drinks are on me, you know. So he had all these instant friends, and everything was all excitement, excitement, excitement all the time, and he never really had time to face the consequences of his decision. And there he was in this country, like you say you want to go to Seattle, and we don't see where we're heading. We think we have a better way.
Yeah, we think that we do. You know, I just wonder, and you know, here's this father that's he knew. You know, how comes that moms and dads know what's best? I mean, you know, you've shared me some of your stories. I mean, did you think that moms and dads knew everything? I mean, moms, they're out of touch. I mean, I used to tell my dad, you know, of course, I grew up in the early 70s, had long hair down to my shoulders, and my dad hated long hair. Yeah. And the things that I did, these bell bottoms and all that, and Dad said, well, you just want to live like the hippies or something? And I said, well, no, not necessarily, but you know what I told Dad? You, Dad, are out of touch. You're just an old fogey.
Yeah.
And I can imagine that prodigal son was saying, Dad, you really don't understand. Your rules and regulations are hindering my freedom. Well, yeah. And yet he went out there, he spent all that money. He bought all those drinks, he thought he was having freedom, and it seemed like at the very end, it all ended.
It all ended. Well, the Bible says there came a famine in that land. Isn't it funny how the Lord allows famines to come into our land? It says, the Bible says he began to be in want. You know, for the first time, really, in that whole experience, all that constant excitement stopped. And in that moment of really what would send most of us into depression, I'm sure it sent him into depression.
I'm sure
it was in that depression that he heard the voice of God calling him.
And yet it seemed like, not only maybe in depression, but I've talked to many people that have been low and they've thought about, you know, committing suicide. Like it's all over with. And yet, Mark, if you think about it, with the prodigal son and with each one of us and people that think about having these not only depression but committing suicide, they never realized when that prodigal son had the money, he thought everything was cool.
Yeah.
But really, he was probably in worse shape there than when he finally had nothing. I mean, what do you think? I mean,
well, yeah, you know, the other thing about the story is, I mean, here he was and he was down and out, but the Bible says he went and he joined himself to a citizen of that country. You know, sometimes we can be down and out, and yet our pride is still too great. You know, it was still too much for him to say, you know what, maybe I made a mistake.
Yeah.
Maybe the old man was right. And maybe I should, no, he wasn't going to do that. He's like, okay, maybe I made a mistake, but
Mark,
I'm going to fix my mistake myself.
Did you ever admit that you made a mistake? I mean, when you were younger,
no,
maybe Dad was right?
No, I tell people, when I was 18, I knew everything. It seems the older I get, the less I know.
You know, young people, I tell them, you know, when you're 15 or 16, you know, you've got all the answers. 17 or 18, you know that you do, and you think your parents are dumb as a box of rocks.
That's right.
But when you get 24, 25, 26, I've had even my kids come and say, Dad, you know what? I think, you know, you're getting a little wiser. You're starting to understand better. Well, I don't know if it's me that's understanding better or they're really maturing in understanding,
Yeah.
you know? So that, and you think about that prodigal son and that. And then he was feeding the pigs.
Oh yeah, and for a Jewish boy, that was the worst. I mean, that was, you know, the Jews understand well, biblically, the Bible says that the pig is an unclean animal, and so for somebody with his background to grow up and have to be feeding the pigs, I mean, that was as low as you can go.
Well, you weren't even supposed to touch a carcass, or you'd be set unclean till the evening
Yeah.
in the Old Testament. So here he is feeding these pigs, and then he had to eat the food of the pigs, the husk, it said, just the husk like the corn. I just can't hardly imagine. And like you said, then probably at that time, he probably started thinking of that old dusty road.
That's where the Bible says he came to himself. It's interesting because at first the Bible says he began to be in want, and then he went and he got the job with the pigs. You know, so he realized a need, but he was going to fix his own need. And it wasn't until he was out there and he saw how low he had sunk, and he said, you know what? The Bible says he came to himself. He realized, and when he says he came to himself, he thought back on his father, and he said, you know what? My father's slaves have it better off than this. Now here's a young man who wasn't willing to live in his father's house, abiding by the rules of his father's house, as a son, who now is actually thinking about abiding by the rules of a slave.
Which obviously, I guarantee you that the slaves had more rules than he had.
That's right. No question.
And now his so-called freedom, you know, ends in want, and there's a famine in the land. He's feeding these pigs, he's eating the husk.
Yeah.
And now he's saying, hey, the slaves have it 100 times better than me. So he started singing this. Man, what a story.
Yeah.
And but it had to take some nerve.
Yeah.
You know, I know that with my mother, again, back in my little story, when I went to that phone booth, I called my mom up. Because I ran away from the school. When I knew I was kicked out, I grabbed my bags, like the prodigal son,
Right.
and I said, I'm out of here. I'm not coming back. And I had a town student, because I was in a dorm, and they took me to town. I said, I need to call my mom and let her know, my mom and my dad. My mom answered the phone, and I said, Mom, I'm leaving, and I'm not coming home. And of course, she was just crying. And I really thank God for parents that love their children. And us children, when we're small, we don't understand that. But my mom said, it doesn't matter. And I said, I'm a failure.